summer.
That's right. Then I can go on vacation in May.
There you go. Who you kidding? You don't get a vacation. You're building a house.
Now I'm even leaving that project too. I'm all done. My brother's gonna take care of it while I'm gone.
Nice.
Have you sold your house yet, Randy?
Yeah, that went a week ago last Friday. So they just stripped the forms today for the foundation, so that's all ready to be backfilled. I should be pouring the floors in that next week. And then the material comes 3 weeks, 2 weeks to stand it, and then the electricians and plumbers come in. I should be in middle of June.
Holy cow, that's a aggressive timeline.
I built my house in 2 months and 2 weeks, the one on Frost Hill.
No kidding. I guess you got one speed, don't you?
Yep. Is that water, Alan?
Nope.
Finest water that you can find in Russia. Russia's finest water.
Yes, it's actually, it's all seltzer right now, Randy. How's the house going?
Strip the walls, strip the foundation walls today. Be backfilling starting tomorrow night after work, and then probably have the plumbers running their stuff through the floor and probably pour the floor next week.
Who's the GC on it?
Me,
You? Right on.
that's correct.
Right on.
We got the septic in, the well's done, foundation's done. Now I got a backfill. The material should be here in 3 weeks, and the guy's gonna take 2 weeks to stand it, so won't be too bad.
You doing pre-made trusses or you're doing all stick?
Now, pre-made trusses, they're all out of 2x12s because it spans 60 feet.
Yep.
26 trusses, $19,000.
But you said downsizing. How's that working for you?
I downsized the living quarters. I didn't downsize my garage.
Yeah, well,
What guy does that?
it's all priorities. I get it. That'll be cool. It'll make her happy. You'll be in probably what? Memorial Day till 4th of July or?
Yeah, somewhere, I think in second, third week of June, I should be in it.
Yep.
I think in second, third week of June, I should be in it.
Yep. Doing punch lists and paint and all the other crap.
Yeah,
Doesn't sound like you've run into any delays. If you did, you already had them on the front end anyways.
I didn't run into any delays because I'm off 124, so the roads aren't posted. That's why I got my foundation done so fast.
Places they can't get to normal. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Take the minor wins where you can get them with the prices of lumber right now.
Yeah, I'm taking delivery of lumber next week. I locked in on a low price. Well, low price. It ain't really that low, but
Right.
it's creeping up more and more. So they deliver it as they get it. So I keep it in on that locked in price.
Right. Who you working with on that? Hammond, Hancock?
Hancock. Yeah, Hancock. They were $20,000 cheaper than Hammond.
Yep.
Where is it, Randy?
Mechanic Falls.
Ah, okay.
Because it's my wife works in South Paris, so it's halfway for her to travel and halfway for me to travel.
Yep.
You totally made her happy.
Yeah,
The 45-minute turnaround for her right now is actually a little bit much, so that makes sense.
Yeah, we had tried living up at camp in Bingham and it was 2 hours for her one way. She did it 2 days. She goes, I ain't doing it no more.
You have 4-hour commute. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, she wasn't having it at
It's
all.
a long day, and by the time you get to spend some time with her, you'd wish you left her at camp. She's ugly at that point.
Yeah, usually by the time she gets home, she's so irritated. I just go outside.
Yeah,
Wrong thing to do is ask her what's for supper when she gets home.
right. Not a strong lead.
No.
All right, I think where we stand, let's see, I'm seeing Jeff, I'm seeing Mark, I got Norm, I got Cassie. Looks like everybody's here.
Yep.
How about the finance committee side of things? We look,
I think everybody's here.
all right, why don't we start with attendance? We'll get this thing moving.
All right, Counselor Albert,
Here.
Counselor LaRochelle.
Here.
Counselor Ward,
Here.
Counselor Lunt. He's here. I think he's muted.
One more
Here.
time. There you go, Mark.
Counselor Ganong. He's here. He must be muted. Counselor Kobe,
Here.
Counselor Fellows,
Here.
Keep going. We'll circle back to Jeff here at the end.
Okay, so the Finance Committee, Jesse Paul Zach.
Here.
Heather Ward,
Here.
Noli Lopez,
Here.
Curtis Lunt,
Here.
Dan Lehman,
Here.
Rick Green, Kayla McCrader, Tracy Austin. And for department heads, Steve Avoli,
Here.
Randy Seer,
Here.
and Kayla Tierney.
And one more time, Counselor Ganong.
Here. Sorry about that. Had audio
You're
issues.
good, sir. You're good. Let's dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance being a workshop, and I asked Diane, she sent out the new revised agenda. Basically, I just asked her to recap. She sent us some materials on updated fund balance and the budget as it stands at present, just for the listening dot. She could go through that if she would.
I will, and Kayla's gonna share her screen so that you can all follow along with me.
Sorry.
All right. So the first screen is going to be the designation of unassigned fund balance. Since our last meeting, we have received the audit and our unassigned fund balance is more than what they quoted us for the purposes of doing the budget early on. So right now, our unassigned fund balance is $3,195,275. And for the purposes of doing this budget and using unassigned fund balance, I'm doing about 13% of the general fund, which allows us to use $952,760. So so if you take what we've assigned this year, fiscal year 21, the 62,538, and then the 55,000, subtract that from the 952, that gives us $835,222. And listed below, when I started the budget, I listed a bunch of things that I wanted to come out of unassigned fund balance. I've updated that by the town billings for the repitch of the trash roof. That was $55. Today, I added $6,000 to that and removed $6,000 from the budget under town buildings. So this group totals $435,000. And then if you keep going below, Since our last budget meeting, I pulled out of Parks and Rec. Well, actually, these weren't even in the Parks and Rec's budget, but he's got some issues with his 2 trucks. So he's got 15,000 sitting in an account for insurance. That was the insurance we received on the Ford Explorer. So we're estimating to replace 2 trucks, it'd be 20,000 apiece. Then I removed tax abatement from the budget, 10,000. And then for the fire department, I took out the additional 3,000 for hose replacement and about $2,175 for other equipment. I removed from the Public Works Department 15,000 for plow trucks, 12,000 for guardrails, 10,000 for sidewalks, and then 185,000 for the excavator, trailer, and plow trucks, totaling 262,175. When you add that to my 435, that's the amount that if you go back up, Kayla, that totals to 697,205, and it still leaves us with about 138,000 that we can assign. Now, if you go back down, Kayla, I've listed some departments where this would be a good use of that money is if we started filling or creating what you call capital reserve accounts. And we should be doing that every year. And this is the first year since we've been using unassigned fund balance that we've had some money left so that we could actually start the true CIP accounts. So we'll have the money available in future budgets to pay for some of these capital items. Does anybody have any questions on this part of it?
Chair, may I?
Yes, Vern.
Yeah, just one question on the capital reserve. I don't see a line in there for the comp center. Is that under police or should we know we actually.
That would be under the police department, yes.
Would be. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was broken up or not. Thank you.
No, I'm just kind of generalize it right now by department and we can further assign from there if you decide to put anything into those departments. But yeah, that would come under the police department.
I have a comment if I could.
Sure.
In discussing the capital reserve accounts, if you look at the various accounts for the expenses we have ongoing, like the vehicle replacement for the police department, and so forth, and don't include that in there because we're budgeting essentially that much every year anyway. But if you put in the capital reserve accounts, what we should have for items out the road in the capital expense and what we're able to put aside. For example, she's talking about putting 135,000 in there. We at this point don't know what we would need in there to essentially escrow the accounts going forward that need replacement. For example, if you're going to replace something 10 years down the road or 8 years down the road, or some vehicle that we keep typically for 10 years, if you divide that amount by 10 and put it in what we should be saving, that would add to the amount that we need to should ideally be putting aside. So at least we'd have a guide on what would be the ideal to use with undesignated funds or whatever going down the road. And we might even be able at some point to budget that amount to go in there.
Can I, on your point, Don, I'm going to counter it, and Mark can attest to this because he's heard me preach to this at the county level. I'm not always a fan of capital reserve accounts without a specific purpose. Primarily the reason being is the value of the dollars today to save for the future has a bearing on what you're asking the town to raise additional taxes against them. It's different because it's fund balance. So Diane's argument makes sense because you're just earmarking it. The one that actually comes to my attention on here, the revaluation is a $30,000 item that we've already talked about in that budget. Moving that item to the fund balance allocation for this year actually helps us in the operating budget, which reduces the budget as well. So I would be completely in that camp. And I sent my questions yesterday, and my first ones that came, Diane, the original calculation to this one, did you remove the 180 grand for the revaluation that you had factored into the last?
Oh, well, I removed the only reason we included the 180,000 and overlay and the 33,000 from that check we got from Falmouth was because we didn't have enough unassigned fund balance at that time to cover the items we really needed to cover. So, I mean, you can certainly take that 180,000 and assign it somewhere, but it's just going to go into unassigned fund balance and we can use it next year.
That's the point that I wanted you to make on camera, is the fact that the difference between 12% and 13% is an additional, I ran that math, an additional $170,000. You add the 180 that's not in this, in the 33, we're talking another 250 grand that's available next year for fund balance allocations. What I like about this is that given the finality of the audit, in that increase of 800,000 available to us has significantly been a game changer to get into this dialogue. It gives us greater flexibility, because my concern in the first forecast is Diane was very conservative in what she gave us with the original list, the 435 that Kayla had. Would you slide back up there, Kayla? That 435 was based on the original calculation, expending everything. Not having to do so helps next year when going through this same process, that we don't already have all the eggs used up in this current basket. That said, I looked at the budgets that we had already blessed through the workshops, and for consideration, other items that I included in my list that could be funded through fund balance to get to that 150,000 that Diane, or 136 that she says is still available. 67,000, if we moved it out from the cruisers, is completely allowable. We've committed to it as operating expenditure because it's the philosophy, the 1-car, 2-car scenario is working now that we're not having to pay the debt service. But if we have the funds available, that would also reduce the budget. Same thing, the balance of the police equipment account for 3,750, fire radios for 5,600, the fire pump 4,600, fire turnout gear at 14,884, 10,000 for the squad 3 repairs. It's no different than Randy's repair of his unit that was in there. And the town office street lighting, outside street lighting for $3 grand, all in, that's an additional 108,000. You throw the reval with that, that's significantly a huge game changer for what we have for the next piece of this. Diane's going to get into the next piece that currently we're about 3.5%. You take another $140,000 off that number, which we've now successfully done. We're well within the yard of what Dawn has provided for a starting point for 3%.
Well,
The way I presented it now, Alan, without doing those additional fund balance expenditures out of the budget that you just listed, we're at 3.1%.
Oh, right on. Right on. That's even better than what we originally
And I
talked
just,
about.
can I make a point? Go ahead, Diane.
I just want to say, I just want to really caution you on taking some of that stuff that are reoccurring expenses every single year out of the budget and funding it through fund balance, because that's going to catch up to us at some point. Where some of these items, most of these items I've listed here are like one-time items, like the bulletproof vests and the town office lighting and the generators. Those are one-time, and you're not going to see those for quite a while again. Whereas the turnout gear, hoses, you know, some of that other stuff, and the cruisers we buy every single year.
I don't disagree with you at all, Diane. It's just the fact that if it's what the wish is for consideration associated with that, because they are an acceptable use of fund balance. I
Right.
get your perspective associated with that, because again, you're presenting a conservative budget, and we're already at the 3.1 that we weren't expecting to be able to get to. We want to tweak it, we can do so because the funds are there. I would advocate that we go that route rather than establishing a reserve that can be quickly undone in the future. The one that has my attention, as I'll mention again, is the one for the assessing, because that's new.
Right.
If we could set that aside now, like the fire truck reserve that nobody has rated in years past, that would be a good one to be able to do, and then know that you got a baseline going into an operating budget.
I think
Just-
the town buildings, the reval, and then the fire department, or you can even change that and call it the fire truck repair and replacement if you wanted to put more money into that, because you know that the ladder truck's going to be coming up before long.
That's why we haven't touched that in the last 6 years. just
Right.
Cushion that blow. Don, go.
I was just gonna say, to my point, if we take all this out of the undesignated fund and pay it off, I think we're kidding ourselves on the budget. We're taking it down this year, but it'll be right back next year without the excess funds probably. And so we'll end up with an increase. I'm thinking with a 3.1 or whatever it is right now, we'd be better off putting the money in some sort of reserve, whether it's for the fire department or whatever. And to my point earlier, I believe if you don't save for the future, you're destined to get surprised. And I think mitigating expenses going forward by reserving is an appropriate way to do that, whether it's enough money or not. Anyway, just my point.
Yeah, and I don't want to beleaguer the point, but I will. And that
Of course you will.
the savings associated with that down the line, it does not pay off on the value of what you're actually going to have to raise operationally to have these reserves for something in the future.
Well, I would just say too, that
What I would offer, to Diane's point, if we were to scrap my list for anything below the police cruisers this year, and you substitute the 75,000 for the fire capital reserve, and we substitute 30,000 for the revaluation, you get to the same place, and I think we'd accomplish the goal that you're talking about, Don.
Yeah, okay. Again, though, if the capital improvement plan or capital investment plan is not a dream wish list, like has been said before, then we need to think about it every year as we go forward.
That very true. And that circles back to my last question. Diane, you mentioned 2 vehicles for Mark. He's got 40,000 for 2 trucks in the budget that aren't in the capital improvement as well. Is that what I understand?
No, they are. I think we sent around an updated capital improvement plan.
Why don't you, just for the listening public, and bring us up to speed, what's happened with them to have the adjusted plan, if you could?
So one truck, he doesn't believe he's going to be able to get an inspection on it. And they're very old, and he got them used. And then the other truck, I believe he's going to need to put some money into it. And I think that because they are so old, that now's the time that we need to upgrade them. I don't know why he didn't put them on, he forgot to put them on the capital, I think is what happened. But now that we do have some of the unassigned fund balance, it's probably would be to our benefit to upgrade those vehicles, either buy something new or buy something used for him for that department. It just doesn't make sense to put money into a 2002 or 2003 truck. And one is not going to get an inspection sticker.
Okay.
Yeah, may I just make a point?
Yes, Fern.
Just the idea that we're sitting here, that we have options. I mean, that's an awesome budget year, right?
Yeah, no
Um,
problem.
It is actually good stuff. I mean, I see logic on both sides. But I've also seen where capital plans like the fire department's been rated hard when we have tight times, which, so again, I think we need to kind of balance it both ways. I mean, the idea if we can, I truly believe we really need to keep the budget kind of on a streamline, so we're not actually inflating it or deflating it year to year. So next year we don't come up against ourselves again. But also the idea of putting money away for known expenses is not a bad plan either. It's just the balance, right? But it's just awesome that we're sitting here thinking that we have the funds to maybe do both or one way or the other. So just a point.
No, by all means, and to circle back, we blessed Diane's original list. She's given us the revised list that now is, go back down again, Kayla. The 6, you add the 2 together, the new items. Does anybody have any issue with having those items come out of the operating budget and go through fund balance? Diane, you have a 0 in there for the bus. Tell me the backstory on that. That's not the one that we paid for with the sunshine.
It is. It is. It's not going to get a inspection sticker. And I think Randy's trying to work with Mark to see if we can get somebody to, Randy can explain to you better what's going on with that bus, but it's the frame of the whole bus.
Go
What
ahead.
it is
Condition.
it's the supports that hold the fiberglass body to the actual frame. There's supports probably like every 20 inches, 18 to 20 inches, I believe. And all those supports, Fern, you can probably appreciate this, they're all rotted. So basically the thing's just holding on by whatever frame mounts are hitting the floor of the bus, which is made out of wood, by the way. So it's, yeah, it will not get a sticker. It's barely, the body's barely holding on. So if that thing ever got in an accident, the frame would stay, the body would take off with the people in it. So that's not a good thing to have.
That's the rec
the-
department bus?
Yeah.
That's it, okay.
And I think it's a good point to bring up right now is the idea of the, even when we're talking about the recreational, replacement, you're not gonna find anything used out there right now that's actually any good. I mean, anything used is used up big time right now. Even that bus when it came forward, I mean, the bus, people don't get rid of those things with low mileage because of no reason. They actually, they get replaced every few years for a reason because they have a lifespan. And typically in the past, as the town, we've actually tried to grab that at the end of the lifespan, but it usually just costs us money at the end. So again, thinking about that bus is a good reason we need to really think hard of not trying to go halfway on a truck. If Mark can get rid of 2 trucks and get one that's actually going to serve a multi-purpose and go with something that's going to last several years, I think it's a better investment than trying to get something used. And one other point, I know there's a few items on this list that we're going to have for discussion, and even the excavator, I'd like to, now hopefully that discussion will come up a little bit more when we come up to Randy's budget. So I'm not sure, Alan, if you're asking us about those at this point in time as a definite, but I'm sure there'll be more discussion to follow.
By all means, Fern, the fact is it's either gonna come up now or it's gonna come up then. So the fact is, you're looking at it now. If you want to talk about the excavator now, we can avoid it in Randy's budget. It's the same place.
No, I mean, I'd be more than happy to talk about it now. And, Randy may love me or hate me, I don't know, but it's always been a discussion coming up, wheelers and excavators. Looking at that job today, I mean, Randy actually had a big piece of equipment there, which made that job go pretty well. I don't think that was a small piece there, was it, Randy? That was a huge
No,
excavator.
it's a 15, it's up there. It's a 48,000 pound machine. So yeah.
So, I mean, with that point being said, every job's a little different, always needs different equipment. If he was doing something small and needed something nimble, a small excavator would be nice. To me, the idea of us actually allocating money a year for rental and actually be able to get what we need, the size we need, something new, something we don't have to maintain, to me is a better investment or a better spend of money. I just have a hard time spending a lot of money on a single excavator that actually is going to be high maintenance. And again, that's just my opinion, and someone else may actually play it differently. But I mean, it's just nice to be able to pick the size equipment that you need for a particular job and just have it delivered, dropped off, and when it's done, you send it back.
Randy, how much did you spend on renting that last year?
Well, last year, as you know, through the TIF program, were able to pay a lot of my excavator costs because I spent most of my summer, if not all of my summer, down at Rorumbo. So that took up a lot of my time, as you know. So had, of course, TIF money was great. So I don't know what the total was on that. Diane could probably relate to that, or Kayla. But I just know it's, I think the machine I had was probably in tune of like $7,500 a month. And I know I had it over a couple months anyway. It was most of the summer. So yeah, so it would have blown my had we not had TIF funds, I would have blown through that and then some, and then probably been in the minus.
We're not
But I'm-
advocating that at all, Randy. We're advocating the fact is if this comes off this list that we put on a placeholder to give you rental to be able to accommodate that for a need.
Let me just bring you up to speed on another something else, because my case 590 was due for replacement. The case 590 is a backhoe, of course, it's got a bucket on the front, backhoe on the back. For those who don't know what it is. Basically, when we're doing ditching operations, the tractor's in the middle of the road, and we have the outriggers that take up even more of the road. And we can only ditch probably about 3 or 4 feet at a time. Then that whole machine has to be picked up. The back has to be lifted, the outriggers have to be picked up. The driver has to turn around the seat, pull forward 4 or 5 feet, set everything back, and do it all over again. The reason why the ditching in this town has not been done in such a long time is because it takes a long time. So if you were to ditch, like, let's say we had to ditch Highland Avenue, it'd probably take damn near a month. It's not very feasible. My backhoe was due for replacement at $165,000 for one piece of equipment. Now, if you look at the 185 or the 180 plus $1,000, that, 185,000, 50,000 of it's going to a different truck altogether. 111's going to a to a machine that's going to be more versatile. And another hint, let me just continue this, and getting a trailer that'll be used for different things as far as getting catch basins, going to pick up, different various pieces of equipment, transporting our screen to and from LCS and then back to our winter sand. We've had to use my personal trailer in the past, so thank you to me, but anyway. And then also, the MS4 program is requiring us to do a lot more of our outfalls, do a lot more of our trails, and to do a lot more. Can't get in there with a backhoe. It's very limited. Plus, we're still going to keep our backhoe, and we're going to invest a little bit more money and redoing a couple valves that are giving us some issues. I put a lot of money in that thing last year, and it's still got some decent life left to it. So, I understand Fern's point, if I needed a big thing to, to move some big, stumps or whatever, the machine that we're getting is 22,000 pound machine. It's half the size of the one that I have. So it's no, homeowners style, work around in your garden and, push some dirt around your driveway. It's a legit excavator with a directional blade and everything. So it's very multifunctional. If this doesn't go, and nobody wants to buy the excavator, that's fine. Put in for a new backhoe, and then we're $165,000 to a piece of equipment that's not gonna fit the bill for a lot of the jobs that I have to do to stay in the MS4 program. And I think, having the excavator, we can reduce that line of 25,000 to probably 15,000. And that's money well spent in my eyes, because the lifespan of that machine in a public works, environment is over 20 years.
Randy, can I ask you a different question? Sorry, Norm.
Sure.
Sorry.
If you had to preference between an excavator and a backhoe, are you advocating that we move towards an excavator and eliminate the backhoe? Is that what I'm hearing? Or
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
But you're also able to extend the life of the backhoe by doing it this way, by purchasing the excavator.
Well, the excavator, because it's not, the excavator is gonna take up the brunt of the digging operations. And two, if there was a quick, like sometimes the sewer department, the water department, or what have you, they come and rent our backhoe. The school department's been renting, you know. So that piece of machinery is still there. The only thing it needs is one solenoid that's sticking up where the extender hoe tends to want to keep extending ever so slightly as you're going down the road. So you have to pin it before you leave. It's not a big deal, but Fred's ordered the new solenoid and that's going to get replaced fairly soon. So my thing is that we have a decent backhoe. It's not all rusted. It's not, you know, it's, I advocated to put it off a couple of years when I first started here. And I don't think we should have to replace it for a good while if we just keep the maintenance up on it. And then the backhoe, I mean, the excavator will just add to our arsenal of equipment that we need. And I don't know about you, but I mean, in a business standpoint, leasing and renting stuff's great. It's 100% write-off, but I don't think that's the case for a town. My thing is, in 5 years, the thing's going to be paid for, and after that, you know, like I said, the reduction in my line for rental equipment can go down 10, 15 grand, because other than excavators, we really don't rent a whole lot.
Mr. Chairman,
This year, my rental is going to be for a sidewalk paver, which comes from Ambrose, but it's, you know, $3,500 a week or so, and I can lay down a heck of a lot of hot tops as long as I have it all prepped.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd just like to say, I agree with Randy that the town has a lot of ditches. If we had a lot of, if he was asking for a grader, I'd say we don't have enough dirt roads, but we do have a lot of ditches. And I think he will get his money's worth out of it. Of course, you'll have to make him prove it, but I think he will.
Okay. So the point that we heard, Randy, is down the road, if I heard you correctly, we wouldn't have to reinvest in another backhoe. We would be able to do the versatility with the excavator, or am I wrong?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. That's what, so it's available here, so at best, we could have a trade-in on that item there, but you're saying that there's value to it right now while we still have it, because we've already paid for it, for the point that's actually in the discussion here. Okay.
And this,
Others on this, please? Yes, Don.
I was gonna say, and of all the years to do it, this looks like the one that we can get away with a minimum cost to us in the budget.
Yeah, very similarly, the fact that we did the same with a dump truck back when, similar circumstance, Don, absolutely. Other counselors on this or finance committee members, please?
Oh, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Yep, I see there's $10,000 in there for the Miller Trail fence repair. Now I know in the past we've also talked about signage, and we've gone round and round about trying to have more signage for the end of the trail, so people would actually be able to find those different spots to access it rather than the one spot in the middle. I think it would be wise to put in maybe $5,000 for signage and actually get some progress started on making real signs to direct the public there.
Thank you.
Good point. Good point.
Mark, do you have a preference on the item that we were talking about right here with the excavator? While I got you on this hook.
No, I think the excavator does make sense there. I mean, it's a big expense, and I understand it makes some people's eyes bulge to see that, but I do think Randy makes a good case for it there, that would be more versatile than the existing stuff that we have, as long as we're replacing that current machine and not going to say we're going to buy a new one of those 2 years down the road in addition to it.
Thank you. Norm, how about you? Only because I'm looking at you first.
Yeah, no, it's tough, but I think with Randy's explanation and the fact that he's going to be able to take the current backhoe that we have and do something with that, I can support the excavator purchase. And so that's really, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. You guys have covered all the highlights. So I can get on board with it.
Cassie?
I'm good with it.
How about Jeff?
Yeah, I think I'm all right with it too.
Okay, I think that given the finance committee, please, anybody else have an opinion one way or the other?
I'm just wondering, this is Heather, I'm just wondering about anything for the solid waste, as we look at, you know, how we're gonna approach possibly fees and things like that. I don't see any wiggle room in here for other equipment. Let's say, for example, scales or redirecting the way the traffic is going or anything like that. And would that be the appropriate time to place into this reserve?
If I can comment on that, Heather, we've looked at the feasibility in the cost of the scales. The footprint of what we have and to get the traffic to flow, because everything's a one-way street up there. So we'd have to rely on people they scale in, they tear in, then they tear out. So they'd have to go around and come back up through and get back in line and hop on the scale again. Logistically, it's a nightmare because if you've been up there on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday, it's logistically a nightmare as it is. To throw scales on there and then we're going to be chasing money. That's been the issue with that all along. The other thing is to increase the pass, we'd have to increase it by a lot to cover these shortfalls that we're having in the rise in cost in the disposal of waste. We just got hit again for the OBW from Brimmel's, which is going to add another, I think Diane could probably chime in. I think it's another $7 per ton, which is going to be another $5,500 a year. Yet again, another raise, another rate hike. The only thing feasible here, and the only way to make it fair to everybody with your commercial haulers, from the people that use the facility a lot as opposed to people that use the facility a little, is the paper bag. It's really the only way that it can be done fairly and streamline what goes on up there. I mean, I know this is going to be a topic for something further with us and the finance committee. But I mean, you got to really look at everything, and you got to look at how everything's going to flow up there. And just having to, chase down. I mean, we're chasing down enough people as it is, with, kicking people out because of masks and what have you. I mean, the cops are on streets up there. It seems like everybody's, up in arms about wearing masks. And we tried the PD thing, and that's just not working out very well either. So.
Thank you, Randy.
And filling,
Yeah, I think my intent was really, do we need to have a placeholder for any possible capital like expenditures that we could be using reserves for?
Right. I mean, like I said, the tractor trailers, the tractors are fine. The trailers cost, upwards of $70-something thousand. With the price of steel going up, you can expect those to be 80, 90 grand if we had to get another compacting trailer. But not knowing where the waste, where this whole thing is with the transfer station going, I don't know how much to, allocate. I mean, we have a new forklift. That's about the only real expense that we're going to have, moving forward with the solid waste.
Randy, separate topic, same house. Salt barn. I heard dialogue. Did anything come from anything with Gray, or is that topic dead?
No, it's not dead. Diane's been in touch with the interim town manager there. I've met with the public works director a couple times. It's an 80 by 120 building, and it's an arch building. It's very nice. It's definitely, we could use it. They basically want it down and they want it gone. They're trying to put a value on it. And we're trying to tell them that it's going to cost quite a bit to tear it down and reinstall it. We've been in touch with this guy by the name of David Trask. He installs and installs these type, like New Gloucester just put a new one in. Theirs cost them like 600 grand. So this type of building, it's the metal and everything's real good. It's just finding out how much it's going to cost to tear it down and put it back up.
So to that point, one of the dialogues that's been kicked around for as long as I've been on the council, if not longer, is the salt shed associated with that. If this has viable traction, would that be a worthy placeholder for some of this as well?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would be nice if we could. We just don't have that concrete price of what it costs to tear it down and put it back up. That's what we're waiting for.
100 grand, 150 grand, Randy? What are we talking? What do you give me a high number?
Jeez, I really couldn't tell you. I mean, to look at the thing, it's massive, you know, and I'm like, oh, wow, I really couldn't put a number on it. It's not my forte. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I could tell you 150 and I'd be 100 off. I don't know. You
Yeah,
know?
no, but it gets us a hell of a lot closer than buying this thing on the retail market.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And
I'd probably have to say 250 anyway. By the time you get done with concrete and disassembly and
that was my other question is I drove by and I was sitting in line because people were backed up on the Saturday there. Looking at the blueprint, could you make that size building fit on that corner if you encroached into where your operation is, or how would that play on that property?
Yeah, because the where the concrete pad is now, all it would do is extend out towards my town garage, towards the garage, probably another, I think either 30 or 40 feet, but the width is the same.
Okay, that's what
The
I
width is actually a little bit less than what's there right now.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
is it a project that could be, assuming it did work out, a multi-year thing where you disassemble it and transport it and then put it together in phases over the next year or two, and spread the money use out?
Potentially,
I imagine it.
potentially, but it just
I imagine
we need to get it off their property sooner than later because somebody else is going to get it. That's a very narrow window. So that's why I was
Well, that's,
approaching the dialogue now, right?
well, that's what I meant. If you
Yeah.
tear it down and move it, but it's another thing to pour concrete and set it up again.
we have the area to store it, so it's not like we don't have the area.
Right. I am of the mindset if we've got a chance to be able to make this work where we don't have to pay for the materials to be able to do it, it's the disassembly and reassembly that this is the time to be able to try to make that work. And
We could,
yes,
Out
Don.
again tomorrow and see what they see if Dave Trask has come up with a number. He was going to talk to his, because it's an archway type of garage where it's a laminated arch that spans the whole thing. It comes apart in the middle and it has to be trucked by a tractor trailer. So the arch, the guy with the arches, that manufactures the arches, the laminated arches, was going to go and inspect it, make sure that they were all good, and then get back to that Dave Trask that does the installation.
Right. And again, for the listening public, Randy didn't scare me with a $250,000 number because as I just listed through, there's 172 that actually the difference between 12% on this fund balance allocation and 13 that Diane's put in, plus the 180 that we didn't earmark for the amount for overlay, you're at Randy's 250 already. So I'm not flinching because if we're going to do it, this is an item that has continually been pushed down because of that kind of consideration to be able to address. If it's going to work, now's the time to be able to consider, because you're not paying the exorbitant construction materials costs that everybody's dealing with at present.
This is still the project that we should be working on to avoid salt contamination as well.
That is exactly it.
Correct.
It's never been deemed unnecessary. It's just how does it work on the existing blueprint?
Chair?
Yes,
I'd be curious to see what the numbers are, because as any construction, when you got to do both process, the idea of tearing down and putting it up, it's, you would think it would be an easy process, but I would assume that the price could be pretty substantial for the labor and the shipping of it. But, I mean, you got to figure whatever they put up a new building for, it's going to be twice of that anyways, labor wise. So, it's one of those things to price out. And then I guess at the end of the day, at what point do we get to be careful about the idea of the expenditure amount, whether or not we can do it without going to some type of vote? So again, it's one of those things where I think we just have to be careful on how we approach it, and whether it's done in pieces or not. I mean, it's just one of those things at the end of the day, I think we have to come up with some type of determination price wise before we can even consider it, right?
that is very true in that regard.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Norm.
So yeah, I would just go ahead and say that sometimes in our efforts to try to keep the cost under control, we tend to take a road that we think is going to be one that's going to save money. I just wonder about long term, if we're breaking this thing down, putting it back together, what's the life expectancy out of it versus the investment that we're going to put into it? Are we just looking to use it as a bridge, or are we trying to get more out of it? So I think for me, a lot of that comes into play when we start to look at cost and say, what are we doing here? So I think we're going down the right path, doing our due diligence, getting the information from those in the know, and doing the inspections to see if it could make the journey or if it's even worth it. So, all that stuff is good news, but I think that we also got to, keep our eyes on the fact that if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We don't have to try to force it there. We just go with a different route and come up with a different plan.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Don.
I don't think it costs us anything to put the money aside. And
I'm advocating.
to the
Yeah.
point of investigation, yes, I think it needs to be thoroughly figured out before we blast out there and purchase something that's going to cost us, as much as a new one would. So yeah, but putting money aside I think is worth the effort.
For right now, for the time being, this has, is it the June 17th or whatever, that the final budget's actually approved, Diane? So what I would say is parking lot salt shed, to give you guys the ability to be able to come back to us with more details for some of the specifics for the feedback you guys got tonight. Is everybody comfortable with that at least? Because we haven't pulled the trigger yet, but at least it gives the ability to be able to flesh out some of the specifics, because to Fern's point, there's clearly a referendum component, anything above 250. So we need to be very conscious associated with that we don't get to that line where we've committed and violated the charter. Back to the excavator, I heard that straw poll, that's good. Anybody want to suggest that actually go parking lot, or do we have enough to be able to keep that in for consideration?
The only negative one on that, and my biggest concern, was the idea of versatility of equipment. I think the backhoe and the excavator do play multiple different roles, but I think it's kind of unusual the last couple of years. I mean, we actually, if Randy wasn't here last year, we went to had someone 2 months into an excavator doing the Rumble Park. I don't think he would have had his staff out there. So if we're going to have adequate staff to actually be doing a lot of ditching and keeping this machinery to the point where it's being used, I mean, I'm definitely, I think the idea of owning something instead of renting is better. If we're going to be down to 1 or 2 employees during the summer, like we've seen in past years, and not have the ability to do it, and the machine's sitting more than not, I mean, that would be my concern. But if Randy feels that we get the staff and we can rock this thing and get the money's worth, I don't think it's a bad venture. Just as with any piece of equipment, you got to use it and you got to maintain it. So as long as we can keep those 2 things happening, I'm all good with it.
Okay. Last
I'm
piece,
all for getting in the office and doing it myself, so.
then you can't go anywhere, sir, except spend your summers in it.
That's right.
That leaves us with a bus. My understanding, Diane, your 20,000 is a replacement of a used bus. Is that correct, or are these
Oh.
two pickups?
No, I don't have anything in there yet because I want to see if they can fix that bus
Okay.
before I
Well,
put anything, because everybody's made good points about that. I don't think we should be looking for a used one this time around. We're gonna have to buy a new one.
And the point that I would make associated with that is that's a pretty significant investment.
Yep.
For limited use. We may go back to actually renting as we need, and the cost of the programs would have to pay for that.
Exactly, and that's an option too. So that's why I've left it blank. I've just put it on here because it needs to be on the list depending on where we go with it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Yep.
Go ahead.
From somebody that's driven that bus, it's been used for multiple things, not only, Moxie, it's been used for Winterfest, it's been, it's not just the senior group. So I know it gets used a lot for the town, and it does give other options. But I just wanted to add that it's not just a single use, piece. It's been used a lot for the town, and it's been a good.
So thanks, Dan. And the fact is, you're absolutely right. It was what it was originally intended for, was specifically earmarked from seniors funds, but it's recreations programs. So by all means, I appreciate that. Thank you. That said, I would still like consideration for moving the police cruisers, 67,000 off the operating to this fund balance list. Anybody else game for that discussion, or if nothing else, I'll park it with parking lot.
I think on the cruises, I think we just gotta be careful not to keep that as a budgetary issue. If it's coming back next year, I hate to take it away and then not have it next year already figured into I hate to show it next year as a $60,000 increase when it really wasn't. It was just kind of taken away from somewhere else. But I like the theory. I don't want to set us up for a bad year next year. That's all.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
no, what I would offer on that, Fern, is next year would be half. It would be the 37,000. You know it and I know it, but that regard, I can appreciate where you come from. Yes, Mark.
Mr. Chair, my suggestion would be if we're concerned about keeping the tax rate down, what we could do is we could just use the extra money that's in the pot there as a line item to reduce the tax budget, reduce the tax burden in the budget rather than pull things off the budget. So you're not creating that effect that Fern is concerned about, where you're seeing the budget appears to be inflated next year when it really isn't. I mean, I think that's an option that is on the table there, so we can do a, budget money specifically to lower the tax rate.
But then we run into the same issue we run into at the county level, where they're propping up their budget by counting on it on an annual basis from the same source, Mark. That
Right, we're just one hand to the other when we're doing it there. If we pull it off the balance sheet, we're doing the exact same thing. We're just calling it by a different name. I think it's just more clear, I think, to the public to leave it on there that they can see you're buying police cars every year and not, well, where'd that come from? What happened last year?
We budget the same amount every year for the police cruiser. Even though we only buy, like next year, we'll be buying one, we still budget the same amount, and then half of it's gonna go into that reserve, so that when we get to year 2, we'll have enough money.
Mr. Chair,
My personal opinion is just leave it alone. Sorry, Mark.
no, you're okay. So I think it does feel, from a sourcing perspective, I think we've all along got into a pretty good rhythm with how the purchase of these vehicles is gone with police cruisers, in regards to police cruisers. So I don't see any real change. I don't think there's anything that's happening here that's sort of a shell game or don't look over here. We're taking the money from a different spot. It's the same thing we've always done. Yes, we're allocating the resource from a different location, but I don't think it's something that we're going to try to continue to, come from this spot again and again and again and not allocate the funds every year, to Diane's point. We've always committed to that, and I think we're going to continue to do that. So, my take.
Anybody else? We had talked about the other items for the reserves. Is there any temperament for the revaluation actually earmark coming out of that, because that's a brand new item, first year into this.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I think it's a smart idea to put that money aside for the revaluation now. I think we have the opportunity, and it's something that we know we have to prepare for. So I think it makes good fiscal sense to do so.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I guess the question would be, Diane, is how far out do we feel that reval is? And if we have an idea cost wise, and to me, if it's 4 years out, if we can calculate, I'd say to put any more money that we need to aside for it. I know it's going to happen, but it's one of those things where, as we talk tonight, we do find we have a bunch of different needs, that salt shed is something that's been talked about for years, and it's something that, we may be forced, our hand may be forced at some point in time. And I realize it's all, as Mark said, one bag of goods, but
I think it's gonna be 8 to 10 years. So if you start now with 30,000 a year, just say it's 10 years, you're gonna have 300,000. That's not gonna be enough for a reval when the time comes.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
And a good cautionary tale right now is if anybody who's taken a look and noticed the news article about the city of South Portland, and right now they're going through a reval and looking at some property tax increases to the tune of 30% in some cases. So their homeowners are up in arms because of the time that it took for them to get prepared and ready to do theirs. So I just think it's smart for us to be ahead of the curve if we can, and that's why I support it.
Okay. Anybody else? In or out? I have, it seems like 2 and 2.
I support it as well. I can't imagine why would we want to come up against $300,000 or more at year 10 when we haven't made any progress toward it?
Cassie or Jeff?
I'm good with it.
Cassie,
Okay.
okay. 30 grand to put towards that, Diane.
Okay,
And the last one that I'll temper is the fact that one that's been out there for 10, 12 years now is the fire department 75,000 that we haven't touched in the last 5, 6 years. It'll be right back there next year, to your point, but the fact that not having to actually come up with it this year because it's already set aside from what we have in fund balance gets to that place. Any temperament for doing that? I would advocate for it because it at least points to what we're actually doing with the fund balance funds that we have available. Anybody else, one way or the other?
Alan, maybe could we just back up a minute? So are we working with that 130 figure? I mean, is that the numbers you're looking at? I mean, are you allocating, putting 75 out of that 130? I guess we're throwing around a bunch of different numbers, and I was just curious to see if it's that 135 figure we're looking to see what we're using for a total.
That was the figure, yes, based on Diane's original number, absolutely.
You take 75 out of that and 30 for the other one, or at 105. So now we're left with 20 some odd thousand.
Yeah. Right. And if nothing else, we can put that one on the parking lot and consider it at the end, because to Diane's point, that is the next item on the list. We're at 3.1 now anyways. So we're about where we needed to be. Okay. I would advocate, let's put that one in the parking lot for consideration at a later date, Diane, just to move.
okay.
How's that?
75,000, right?
Yep.
Can I ask one brief question?
Sure.
At the 3.1, Diane, what are revenues?
Well,
how are
right now
revenues
I've
projected?
plugged in 1.7 for revenue sharing because that's what's posted on the main revs site.
Okay.
Whether they revise that before we vote on the final budget, I don't know, but just say that's what they're projecting and that's what we get. That's 900,000 more in revenue than what I've projected this year. So
Okay.
you won't see a tax rate increase with that. You might even see a decrease depending on what the school comes in with.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not even factoring in my other revenues at this point either. But
Diane,
just
why don't we jump to the next piece? go through the key budget cuts to get us to 3.1 that you're talking about now, and you can. go
Okay. So
Yeah.
we'll want to look at the budget changes next. So most of the changes here, tax collection is, we had the open position, now we filled it, so we've been able to decrease the health insurance. We have the change in technology, going from a new employee position to a contracted position. That ended up saving us 57,000. And going down through the police department, just based on the changes from our last budget, and the K9, what we're able to reduce that by 12,000. That most of that's because of the K9. The comm center, we were able to redo because we had a change in personnel there as well. We were able to reduce the budget by 13,000. So that's a total reduction of 105. We go down further. This is where I took the town buildings from 2 years ago. We were raising 20,000 under the building expense. We increased it in this budget here because we had some major things we needed to do. So I'm bringing that back down to what we had 2 years ago, 20,000. So that's a 5,000 reduction. The contracted professional services, I reduced that that was a new line item in the budget this year. I've taken it out and I put it up under the unassigned fund balance with the roof project at the transfer station, because that's mainly where we do use a clerk of the works. We haven't, I took the 10,000 for tax abatements out because I know we can fund that a different way, and which I believe will be the overlay. I took out the additional hose replacement, not what we always, the reason we increased it this year was because I think we decreased it last year when we came in with that 300,000 reduction. So we need to get our hose back up, and we really need to replace it. So I took it out of the budget and put it under unassigned fund balance in the same way with the equipment. These two amounts are in addition to what we normally raise. And under public works, as you saw on the previous screen, I took the 15,000 for the plow truck repairs, 12,000 for guardrails, 10,000 for the sidewalks, and then 185,000 for the excavator. So the total combined reduction is 398,000. So now my budget increase is 278,751, which is a 3.1% increase over the current year.
And to only add to that, we just took 30,000 off by taking the assessing off that.
Well, that's not in the budget though.
Where was that?
That was in the CIP, but we didn't put that in the budget. I'm looking right now. I don't think that's in the budget. Under assessing. No, it's not.
Okay, so it came up in the CIP, but we passed on it is what I'm hearing.
Right.
Okay.
Because originally when we first started the process, I didn't have as much unassigned fund balance as I do now. So I didn't even put that as a consideration.
Okay. That brings us up to speed on everything to date.
Right.
Last meeting, we asked for a budgetary update from the school. Norm, do you still got that sheet in front of you there?
I do. I can just, I'll give you just the bottom line for now, because without getting into the details of everything on the sheet, I think the takeaway was that right now they've dropped that number down to the ask from the above and beyond from the local funding has decreased down to 231,829 is what it is as of this moment. So $231,829. The breakdown of that to follow of how they got there and how they're continued to whittle that down. But it's definitely a much nicer number than the kickoff point, which we expected anyway. That was a working number, and they were working their way down from that. they've gotten creative with how they've been able to allocate resources that they received as part of the CARES Act, and attack projects that way, which they were able to then remove from line item budgets for long-term project around energy savings and building maintenance. So these are all good things. If we have to look at things to come out of the pandemic, that worked out well for us from a budgetary perspective. So.
Norm, can you run that number one more time?
Sure, the bottom line as it sits right now, 231,829. And what I'll do is I'll send the sheet out that I grabbed from last night's meeting. I'll send it out to council and you'll all be able to see it.
Norm, get it to Diane so she can send it to the finance committee as well too.
Absolutely.
I mean, the other part of this whole thing is the CARES Act funding. Once we figure out how we can spend our portion of it. Because we're slated to get 900,000 and half of that next month.
I look forward to the answer.
Yeah, me too.
That would be interesting because I remember the dialogue that you and I were having about shovel-ready projects.
Mm-hmm.
And again, is there any traction that this salt shed could actually happen? Is that considered shovel-ready? Because if we're moving and reallocating, it's closer than it seems to be if we can nail down some of the other specifics, but I don't want to beleaguer the point. Why don't you just bring them up to speed on what I was referring to for the rest of the people that are hearing it for the first time, Diane?
So I just don't know what a shovel-ready project means, because when I've been looking at anything that I found online, they're talking about water and wastewater projects, unless you've seen something different than I've seen.
No, I haven't.
So I don't even know if that salt shed would even qualify for this type of funding. There's too many unknowns out there. I do know that we can use it for loss of revenue. And I don't know if we can use any of it to reduce the tax rate. I think those are our two areas that we're going to be able to look at.
Where are the guidelines being? I mean, they're obviously dictated from the federal level, but how are they being disseminated down to the local?
They haven't yet. It's the Treasury Department that has to come out with the guidelines. MMA's been watching for it too. And once they figure it, once they get the information, they're going to send it out to all the towns and cities in the state.
Is there a way that we can leverage any state rep that we have could bang a drum to the governor to get this thing moving along, or at least get something up to say, hey, we want to understand this better. How do we make that happen? I think we're just going to make some more connections. I mean,
well, I don't.
Waiting for MMA doesn't seem like it. I mean, I don't know everything about MMA, but it doesn't seem like an approach I don't want to wait for somebody. I think we should be aggressively going after this, but that's just my take.
But it's not coming down from the state level. It's coming from the federal level.
I don't know. I understand that, but things, you got to push things up. I mean, we're not going to have the same juice to be able to contact the state agents or the federal agencies and have them respond to us in a timely fashion. But if we can use the resources that we have at the state level to maybe make that outreach to get that kind of moving. If there's no movement because they're still drafting those rules or still coming up with it, because I realize this thing is the moving target and they're trying to get it done. But if that's the case, then we're just going to have to be patient. But maybe there's some insight that could at least be, we could get ahead of it a little bit to say, it looks like it's going to land here. So that if we do have some projects that might land under those guidelines, we can at least be anticipating them versus being reactive to it.
Right.
Just my thought.
To the point, for clarification, Norm, when Diane said MMA, I think she meant MEMA.
Oh, okay.
No, I meant MMA, Maine Municipal Association.
For what they're getting from.
Right.
As the
because
point.
their legislative people are the ones that are going to disseminate it down to us.
I'm not even gonna lie. There are so many acronyms floating around out there right now. I'm nodding my head and saying, okay, let's just skip the acronym, go for a name that we know and say, go get us some answers. All right.
And I sent you around that PowerPoint from the national leagues and cities, and they didn't really have any more information either. That's all I'm getting right now. That's all MMA's received as well. But I'll follow up with one of our congressional offices to see if they can enlighten us.
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Diane.
Diane, anything else in your overview? I'm sorry.
No, I don't think so. I think that's about it. Did you want us to move on to the Public Works budget and share our screen?
Yep, please.
So Public Works starts with this organizational level 15050 500, and that's just Public Works Department.
The first one that came off the page to me, Diane, could you please explain what the reclassification with the two positions that we're bringing back are?
Okay, so last year we eliminated the mechanics position out of this current year budget because we had a vacant position. We have since filled that position once the operations manager retired. So we used the leftover funds out of that line item to fill the mechanics position. So moving forward into the fiscal year 22 budget, rather than filling the operations manager position, Randy and I talked about it, and we felt it'd be better to have another driver operator.
Okay.
Rather than an operations manager. So the impact to the budget isn't as great as it would have been had we filled the operations manager.
Okay.
And we really needed to fill that to mechanics position because we are getting way behind on all of our vehicles. One mechanic we have too much going on for just one mechanic.
For the point of discussion that we made for the first meeting, can we just highlight this as the personnel change because it's one that's coming back?
Mm-hmm.
And the point that I would get into, and you reminded me of the other one, is that the second meeting, we kind of got away from that approach. We asked for all personnel changes to actually go to the parking lot. And then the public safety meetings, we blessed the fire minimum manning and the police department positions. I asked Diane to also put those on for that list. I don't anticipate that it will actually change anything that we discussed, but
yeah,
just for consistency and what we were looking for originally, it is a change to personnel that needs to at least follow the directive that we gave her the first night.
Okay.
Any other questions associated with this division that's coming off that you guys are seeing? The only other one that was there, we already talked about, it was the heavy one associated with the excavator that we already covered. Randy, why don't you just give them the highlight of the other vehicle that's on that list? That's the dump truck that's also being replaced this year?
It's not really a dump truck per se, as it is the F-250 that's up at the transfer station is not a stickerable vehicle. It's not roadworthy. It's been used for plowing the transfer station parking lot, which spoke to Diane about it, and it's not safe to have something that's not stickered going back and forth. Had there been an accident or any issues like that, I think we could have probably been in some hot water. So we decided to park that vehicle, and then we let them use the mechanic's truck. So basically what's going on is the mechanic's truck was one of those trucks where one of those deals that you bought at auction, it needed a motor. We stuck $4,500 into the motor, ended up needing some front end parts and everything else. So basically it's a really good truck, but needs some work as far as body work. I think if we send it out, which is the the $15,000 I had in there for getting that truck, the bodywork done for it. Needs 2 new bumpers, needs a new paint job, and and then have that go to the solid waste, and then the mechanics get a new truck, or vice versa. The mechanics can keep the 2008, but then the 2004 would be replaced. The other thing is the F-250 would alleviate the amount of money we're paying Marcel for going to AvCog in the meetings that he goes to. He charges us mileage. This will be a vehicle, since he's on our time. I think it's important that he drives one of the town vehicles and not his own vehicle. And that would be a vehicle which he would have at his disposal to use and to go get parts, because we're always getting dinged on, I don't know what it is, 50-something cents a mile on his car, when I think he should be using a town vehicle running town business. So the F-250 that was getting replaced, of course, is that one. Not knowing what a new, I'm sure municipal buying and stuff, it'll be way under that price. But that truck does have a plow route, the one that the mechanics use. That is one vehicle that has a plow route. And that's why I said it was a plow truck, but it's not like the big dump trucks. It's a regular pickup. So with the buying that we've been having, and I threw a $50,000 price tag at it, just for the fact that, it's going to be outfitted with a plow. And I'm thinking, the new cost, I think it'd be in the $30,000 range, under 40, but I threw 50 in there to cover myself. And also, if you want to get into the 20-ton trailer, of course, that gets into by the excavator, you need a trailer.
Any thought anyway on any of that? Randy answered my question. Any other questions on this division? Anything on Public Works before we move on to winter operations? Next division, Kayla.
Our next division is gonna be winter operations.
It's the same as last year, guys, in that regard. And I asked Diane how we fared with a very seasonable light winter this past year to make the recommendation. So Diane, why don't you recap that for us?
Yeah, so we did, we fared well in the overtime line, and obviously the benefits that go along with it. I can't remember, was it 40-something thousand we have left? I don't remember, Kayla. I looked at it this morning, but we had, I don't know, maybe not quite as much as that, but I think we only spent like 33%.
Let me check.
But that's because we had an extremely mild winter. And when we budget for the overtime for this department, we budget a normal winter. We don't budget on either extreme side. So sometimes we'll overexpend that line, and other times we'll have money left over, but we kind of budget in the middle so that we don't have the fluctuation in budgets.
Chair, may I ask a question?
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to give the numbers.
Go ahead.
So we have 36% used. So we have $41,300 available in that line.
Kayla, go for it.
Just a question, and it may not be relevant. So we're actually, sounds like we got rid of a not a management position, but one of the roles, and actually put on another driver. Is this going to change this overtime and all? Is that going to work with you at all as far as having one more person driving to actually reduce overtime? Or is that, what's your thoughts, Randy?
Well, I think it's just a matter of dividing more of because what we use Greg from the transfer station, and he actually does the loader route, which we want to get him out of and put him into a pickup truck, just because, it's easier for him to get in and out of a truck, if you know what I'm saying. And the other thing is I want to keep my mechanics, at least one mechanic in the shop at all times, because what happens is the mechanics both have a plow route. And what's happening is there's a breakdown. He has to come out of his plow route, go to the shop, grab tools or grab whatever he needs to go fix the truck that's on, broke down. Either the wing fell off, so he's got to change and get the loader, go out. Whereas if we had the mechanic at least one mechanic that stays in the bay, he's going to be more able to get to whoever's broke down faster. And it's been an issue where, he's on one end of town, somebody lost the plow or a wing or something like that, or broke a post and the wing's dragging on the ground. He's got to get the loader from the transfer station. So he has to leave his plow route, get the loader, head out, so it takes a long time. And then that plow route is taking a beating because it's snowing and it's accumulating and it's getting further behind. Now that driver's got to do double time because as soon as he gets done doing his route, he's got to start over again. So it's just been a logistical nightmare. So if we have that extra person, that alleviates that one mechanic that can be in the shop and on call at all times.
Sounds like we're going back to, like we have with the other departments. It's not the idea of an extra, but just the idea of actually being properly staffed.
That's correct.
The other item that I caught on this, just for general consumption, the contracted professional services, this is the 5th year of that contract for sidewalks. So following the next snow season, Randy and Diane, the council will have to consider how they're going to move forward on that with the next contract, if you will. So this is the last year we have at this pricing.
Mr. Chair, at what point do we is it going to be adequate to go out for a bid for that again? I mean, you're saying this is last year. We can't wait till it's over before we actually do that bid process. Is that something that's going to be gone? I guess at what point do we actually do that?
Not until after the next winter, because this upcoming winter is the 5th year of the contract. And I know Randy's had talks with this particular contractor, and I think that he'll do an additional year for the amount we see in this budget.
And that was the point that I was going to say in that regard, is to go with the purchasing policy firm. The fact is, once it's expired, you would actually go out. But if you had the ability to be able to say it made sense because you were going to extend the existing contract, I'd take that all day.
Yeah.
And he said he would.
Good. That'll help next year on the budget position, because that'll mean that provided we don't see any unforeseen cost, and we at least know that this is a division that shouldn't have a significant change from this year to next as well.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Also worth noting beyond the monetary aspect is that one of the biggest challenges that we had, and the reason that we went out, was because of some of the challenges with our own piece of machinery, and then having staff that was trained appropriately to be able to do it without running into a lot of complaints and or damage to said machinery. So I think if we're going to the 5th year, and this is the first time we're talking about it, it's money well spent. Just my take for what it's worth.
And I know, agreed, Norm. The other point that I was thinking when you were mentioning that would be the growing pains associated with the first couple of years with privatizing this are already flexed. And if he's still interested in actually working with us, that's a good thing, because I know that we put a 5-year term on this bid because there was a capital purchase that they needed to be able to make this work for their purpose as well.
I think it would be remiss without saying the following. Shout out to Sidewalk Benny for all his hard work, rocking it and taking care of us.
Mhm.
Any other
It's a
questions?
it's a learning curve for them.
Sure.
I think they're getting it together though. Thank God.
Any other questions on winter operations before we allow Kayla to move again? Hearing none, moving right along, Kayla.
So next is solid waste.
And this is the one where the trash removal line item, we're going to need, gonna have to add another 5,500 to that as of late this afternoon when we got word from Grimmels that they're increasing the disposal rate by $7 a ton. So that's gonna be a change I'm gonna have to make to this budget.
That is what it is in that regard, is that Diane, I asked for some information on how we're doing on revenues, because right now, if you look at this budget all the way down from comparing last year to this year, the one item that stands off is the tipping fees. And this is nothing new to anybody that's been looking at it over the last 5 years. It's any other one item on an entire budget that had that kind of jump from year to year to year to year, they would be clamoring to be able to have reductions. Fair to say, the one point that I've heard in this is hands off of the dump is the one thing that I've heard from most of the constituents that find us. But realistically speaking, we're now talking a $50,000 increase. So why don't you give us the revenue side and see if there's any relief there?
I'm gonna just switch my screen here to show that revenue chart. So I put together a spreadsheet comparing FY21 and FY20 in the current period that we are in, which is period 10, April. So total revenue FY20 at this point is $146,800 budgeted, $149,254.94 collected. That's very good. We have so far collected over what we had budgeted for the solid waste permits. So we had budgeted 77,000 and we've collected $77,277. If we compare that to FY20, same period, April, budgeted 75,000, collected 76,510. Again, at this point, we have collected more than what we have budgeted. And looking at the two, FY20 to FY21, we increased the budget of collection for revenue by $2,000, going from 75,000 to 77,000. And we're still showing that good trend of fully collecting what we've budgeted and then some. So if we look at that difference here of FY21 to FY20, $77,277 collected at this point in April, compared to 76,510, again, this point in April last year. We've collected $767 more in FY21 at this point in time. For both fiscal years, we've collected more than budgeted amounts for talking specifically on the solid waste permits. And we've increased that budget, as I said, $2,000 between FY20 and FY21. The other items, we're collecting more in metal and in yard items. And we're probably going to see more now that it's spring, people are coming out of hibernation, getting their yards together. Other items, tires, we've seen more than what's budgeted, and universal waste. There's still items that we're still collecting on and we haven't met that budgeted amount yet, but overall for revenue collected, it's looking good as far as a comparison to the budget.
Randy? We kind of
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna play the role of Fern, I think. I'm gonna start with a positive and then hit you with a French compliment.
That's fine.
My favorite person at your facility right now is the guy that's sitting in the booth. The fact is, I think COVID did us a huge favor because it has actually enforced the revenue side of things What has that created for complications for you, though?
Lack of staffing up top. Because of that, because of him sitting there full time. I mean, it's great, you know, he does a better job in collecting the fees, but there's less attendance up in, you know, to take care of the waste and stuff that's up top. Sometimes he has to leave his post to like push up the, you know, the mattresses and the couches and what have you. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. And it's the nature of the beast. And then it's, you know, tracking those people down that are coming in and trying to alleviate more than 7 people up in the station at the same time. Because of the COVID, we try to alleviate too much crowding up there. So we've gone from 5 cars to 7 cars, but still, when he's out pushing stuff because he has to leave, because we're still limited. We did hire another part-timer, thank God. That just happened last week, so he won't be able to start. I think he said he could actually start Saturday, so we're waiting for his response on that. But looks like he'll be a good fit. But anyway, that's the issue that we have, still understaffing. Because you're taking a full-timer, because we're not going to trust part-timers up there with the money.
Is it primarily Saturday?
It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday.
No, when's
Any day that ends in Y.
okay, but so you're saying what I'm experiencing because I'm there on Saturday is no different than a Tuesday? That's what I'm asking, I guess.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
So just so I heard this, I'm sorry, I didn't ask, Mr. Chair. Just so I heard this right, Randy, the downside is so we got a guy in the booth. That's a great thing because we're enforcing and actually making sure more things are happening there, as you know, bearing out by some of the stuff we saw tonight. I'm just thinking, right, as you were talking this through with Alan, to your point about part-timers versus full-timers, you want to have a tenured employee who has experience in the booth to be able to handle that, because they're taking the money for everything and stuff, and they're not issuing passes though, right?
They are not.
Right. So I'm just thinking out loud, and I think maybe there might be some staff who doesn't like me when I propose this, but I'm going to say it anyway. What if there's a rotation for the gals in the front office up front to see if there would be any interest in, and this would be overtime, but offering a shift, and they could rotate it or however they wanted it by committee, whoever wanted the shift, ultimately being in the booth to direct traffic that way. Would that be something that, because they could do 2 things, serve functions of money handling. They would have to get training to understand what goes where from your staff, Randy, but then being able to also issue pass same day, real time, right there. I just, you know, I'm thinking it could be a win-win for everybody who wants to get a pass same day, but it all comes down to whether or not financially it makes sense to offer overtime to staff, if the staff even wants to consider that as an option, if they wanted to make up a rotating schedule, or if one of them wanted to be the one that says, I don't mind doing that. It's part of what I want to do. And there's a day during the week, Diane, that works where they could be off. I don't know. There's a lot of logistics.
It would have to be on a Saturday if we did it, because we can't afford to take anybody from that front office.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just,
the town is growing, but we're not growing with it. So that's the issue. And I think the transfer station's seeing the same thing right now too.
Right. And I just wonder if there's a way, it doesn't have to be a forever solution, but it might be a way, if we're going to, rather than hiring another body for the transfer station to sit in the booth, or hiring another body to do the work that's not getting done because we have a tenured employee sitting in the booth, looking at different ways. Now, I know the workshop's not designed for this, so I'm going to stop right here before I go way down a rabbit hole we don't need to go.
Yeah.
It just jumped out.
Let me just add that my assistant, when the new stickers do come out, my assistant Ray, he does pick a couple Saturdays where we really make a push to get them done, and Ray goes up there and does overtime. And yeah, so the only thing he's done different now is that he's not taking credit cards. And you know, the first year that I had him out there, he was actually taking credit cards, but we're not doing that anymore. But he's actually able to sell them up there, and we just streamline it. We have, if you have pass, that's fine. If not, you go to his line, and we really do well. We sell over 100 something stickers on a given Saturday.
Nice.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair?
Chair, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Don.
Oh,
I heard Fern, right, Dawn.
go ahead, Fern.
And again, I think we could talk on solid waste every time we get on this. It's actually could be a night all by itself for a year or whatever we do. One of the things that'd be kind of interesting to see as the discussion goes on is, it's been a great year. But if you look at solid waste permits, it only increased on the $300, but our solid waste increased just today, 5,000, right? It definitely, our expenditures are far outpacing our revenue. I'd be curious to see about the tonnage that we actually haul in. If there's a community that actually hauls in the same amount of tonnage and they do it per bag, what their revenues are for the per bag versus what they do for selling permits. This information has to be out there somewhere. So I'd be curious to see if a community that actually hauls in the same amount of tonnage we have, if they have a pay per bag, what they actually generate revenue for that. But again, this is an ongoing discussion, but I think there's tools out there that we can use to kind of figure that out, because I don't see the expenditures going down. I see them increasing drastically, and that $300 extra in permit fees really isn't going to cut it over a long term. Just my opinion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Fern, Dawn.
The only quick observation I was make is that I look forward to whatever discussion we have regarding the transfer station going forward. Just looking at it roughly, we're collecting $150,000 in permits and everything else, and spending $350 just in trash removal, not counting any labor or anything else. So there's opportunities, and I think there's probably opportunities for the town citizens to even learn how to conserve more. And so I look forward to a future discussion.
To that point, Fern, not Fern, I'm sorry, Don. It would be basically have to double the pass price to match what we're doing just for trash alone.
Yep.
Based on the change today that we got for the OBW, we are going to have to look at our fees to make sure that what we're collecting covers that increase. So it came in so late this afternoon, we haven't had time to do that part of it.
Now,
Chairman.
that's the point. Go ahead. Who'd I have?
Well, I think I heard somebody else, but I just wanted to add that we talked about past prices and concern about your senior citizens and stuff. I just think if we're looking at raising prices on that, I think it'd be great to raise the price, for your general public. But if somebody's a senior citizen, maybe we look at not raising their prices. Just something to take into consideration, please. I'm willing, I used to pay $20 a month to have somebody pick it up for me until I got a truck and I did it myself. So $25 to me for my truck is not that bad. And I don't mind paying more. I just worry about the fixed income senior citizens. That's all.
Agreed, but the point that I make on that, Dan, is the fact is with a $50,000 increase and we're not even covering costs, the fact is we're falling further behind by doing nothing as well, too. So it's got to come from somewhere.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Of the $45,000 increase you mentioned, can you break that down into, is that from Casella or for the incinerator? I can't tell.
Go back.
More detail.
Go back to your other screen, Taylor, so you can show them the line item and you can delve into that for them.
I think it's the trash removal line item that increased to the 45,000. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And can you go to the budget explanation page to tell us what's in that $350,000 figure that Kurt's asking about?
The increase.
Yep. I believe it's the plastic recyclables, but I don't want to actually speak out of turn because Diane had to restructure the the contract with Randy with Casella.
Yeah, and the hauling as well.
Yeah, the hauling.
Yeah.
The hauling went up a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not garbage in general. It seems like it's the recycling that's gone up. And we're not required to do,
Blackout, yeah.
Of course, it all goes by tonnage, and they're taking the glass with the plastic. So glass, of course, weighs up a lot, and that's what's killing us. The glass is heavy. It's not so much the plastic, but it's the glass that's mixed with the plastic.
And then
Randy,
the tipping, oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna ask Randy if there's any way that we can, move away from maybe doing that single, unsorted way of doing it. If there's ways to, keep the prices down there by if we sort that glass out, make people go back to the way we used to do it, be able to sort it out rather than, pay through the nose for it.
Yeah, that's another thing we can, but right now we had looked at that also of having like a bin separate just for glass and trying to bring it down to main recycling, but there's no revenue, but the revenue we'd save on the tonnage is probably something we should probably take a look at, but it's getting a different bin, because we used to do that before. It used to be brown glass, clear glass, green glass, used to be all. That's why the different doors up there in that section, because everything had its own bin. But once they went and put one of those 15-yard, bins in there, everything goes in there. You get your metal, your cat cans or whatever, cat food cans and all that stuff goes in there too. All your tin goes in there also. So we're trying to still keep the program going with recycling, but on the other end, the revenues aren't where they used to be when there was a market for this stuff. Because of the what's going on with China, they stopped taking any of it.
There was an article just in the paper Sunday, if anybody caught it in the Sun Journal specifically. It's been 3 rough years associated with the recycling in the state of Maine with that Chinese tariff.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Oh.
no.
So to that point, I know that we're probably gonna have to get creative in what we're looking at. And so I really think that not only we talk about ways to, do fees and things like that, but I also think we need to bring the education piece to the forefront and what that means to the wallet. And I think that I'm not sure what our strategy could be, but I think it has to be part of this campaign. If we're going to talk about increasing fees, I think we also need to talk about if we have people sorting on their own and not loading up their garbage can or their trash bags with a bunch of glass and tin and other things that are going to add to that overall cost, we can find ways to be a little bit more creative about that. Then it opens doors for us to get back to different ways to recycle. I don't have all the answers on how we're going to do it, but I think that we certainly know that we can't continue on in the way that we're going. It's not sustainable, and there's no way that we can match the cost. So.
All right, Caleb, we're gonna go back to you. Kurt still has a question on the floor, so.
I just have a question. The paper bag approach Randy suggests is the alternative, has a habit of forcing people to recycle even more to reduce the bags. And where that happens, we'll have more recycling going to Casella, which is higher price. And so aren't we chasing ourselves in a circle?
Yep, exactly, because a lot of towns. Sorry.
Sorry.
I just wanted to add that a lot of towns have gotten away from the recycling part of it, where they're just dumping everything in the hole because it's cheaper. Now that's a program that we've talked about, but we don't want to take part of because it's taken us this long to get into the recycling and everybody's mindset into recycling. So if we throw that away now, it's going to take them, that much longer to get back into the recycling mindset once all this, once all the trade and everything goes back, hopefully back to the way it's supposed to, which the recycling companies feel it's going to. It's just a high price we're paying right now. Sorry for interrupting, Alan. I just thought I had an answer for that.
No, I interrupted you. Caleb, did you have the information for Kurt's original question?
Yeah, so the trash removal line includes all those OBW, all the tipping fees, it includes the recyclables like we were all just mentioning. It also includes those other items that people can bring to the transfer station, like mattresses, and tires, and oils, and those types of liquids, and fluorescent lights. All of those have a price for each of those disposals. And the other thing is the composting is included here. So there's a price for each haul. And it's, I think, Randy, is it about $200 a haul?
That's correct.
So all the other items are going to be based on that unit price for disposal, except for the composting, it's based on a per haul instead of a per unit, like a weight or quantity. It's just one haul.
And who is currently doing that?
The
Garbage to garden.
Garbage Garden.
It's to answer Kurt's question, the hauling rate has gone up significantly. We were paying, was it 130 a ton?
Yeah,
That's gone 100.
150 a ton.
Yeah, and it's starting in November, it's gonna go to 245 for each pull.
The agreement with Garbage to Gardens, what was the intent to go versus that versus what we had with Bushes being local associated with that? How did we get into that arrangement? What's the value there, out of curiosity?
If you don't mind, the value is that we put is to get the garbage out of the hole per se, and to get people to take that stuff. And what happens is Garbage Gardens, they come and take the canisters, and we've got about 1.5 yards of compost material that I got to go down and get, and I'm going to put that pile down next to it with a sign that says, you know, you can take a 5-gallon bucket with you, you know. That's basically, you know, for what we've dumped, that's what we've got so far in credit as far as compost material that people can use for planting or whatever they use it for.
And how
But the
much?
reason was trying to save tonnage on all that stuff.
And what is the savings versus it going down the hole, Randy? You're speaking to the listening dot because I know the answer to the question. I was hopeful to get it from you.
I'd have to find out what my tonnage is to date as far as what they've taken. Kayla, do you know if what we've been billed for as far as tonnage goes? Because you can just take that and multiply it by the tonnage that we pay for the tipping fee.
Right, I'd have to go through and I can add them up.
Right. That's a number we can get for you easy enough.
Why don't we do that? Because the point for the listening public is the fact that anything that doesn't go down through the hole that we're sending as trash actually has a significant savings to us, even at the $200 a tip. So that's the piece that and plus, I'm glad to hear that they have the ability, they're bringing back compost that actually is going back into the community. That's part of the reason we went with them as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Yep, I'm just like to kind of follow up on my dad's point there about I'd like to see at some point a full breakdown of the dollar figures of that 350, well, it'll be 355,000 now, of what goes to specifically like the incinerator or Casella's for the recycling or Grimmel's for that metal and that stuff. Just I'd like to see, you know, exactly what dollar figures we have budgeted for what. I mean, if you don't have it right in front of you, that's, you know, fine, but get it for us for a future time.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
we, to Mark's point, we've promised ourselves to delve into this subject in great detail for the last 2 or 3 years when we get out of budget season. Well, I think that we need to, either through the finance committee or something, to prioritize this after we get done with this budget so we can have this lengthy discussion and research that needs to be done to get it done right.
I'll let the finance committee chair or vice chair answer that question because I do know it's one of their number 1 or 2 priorities. And they got started with the committee and then they got kind of derailed actually being a part of the budget process. So Heather, you want to field that?
Sure, that's exactly it. So we've had, Randy's given us updates on the pay per bag initiative as well as the scale. And I think there is one more presentation that's supposed to happen. Kaylee, you can answer that. So I think just the timing of the finance committee coming on board at the beginning of the year and then the budget season, we just didn't have enough time to assess all of those pieces.
Randy can give
I,
you
Mr. Chair, I, sir,
Yep.
on that last portion, because we didn't have that for your last finance committee meeting, but we do have it now. And it's, it'll scare you, the price to do the curbside.
Yeah, if I can, I'll just touch base with that. We reached out to a couple companies and to do the curbside. For one, we have to purchase the truck. Two, it's about $1 million per year for their fee to pick up trash and what we give them for demographics as far as our town. And we gave them what our tonnage was for the last 2 fiscal years. And based on that information, it was up over $1 million for the trash collection itself. Then there's a fee for the truck which we'd have to finance. And then that's not even including the tipping fees. So we're like $1 million, I don't know, it was like $1 million, I can't remember it was up over $1 million per year. And then that doesn't even cost, the $300,000 or $400,000 for tipping fees. So we're definitely not taking a step in the right direction as far as, curbside goes.
Don? You have another question?
oh, yeah, I think I just muted myself, but no, I was just saying that we need to make it a serious discussion in another format. Whether, I know the finance committee's busy, but in the coming 6 months or so, we need to do something with it.
Mr. Chairman.
I agree. Yes, Kurt.
It seems like the first idea of the curbside and the scale, I think Randy just said they don't work. He's probably correct. So the only one that has any feasibility, it seems to me, is the paper bag, and that has its own risk in that it can be repealed by the voters, it can be controversial even if not. So I think it may save you some money, but it may have significant downsides. So I think we should look at that carefully, but I'm not sure if we can do it right without a consultant, because I don't really trust the vendors on this issue. I know Thompson does it, so we should be able to try to get some independent advice.
Okay. Thank you for that. The only other thing that I have, and Diane kind of mentioned it, one of the things that was currently not in this budget to go against that trash removal item would be increase on the per items that are actually there that are in our fee structure. So Diane, are you and Randy going to look at that and bring that to us at a later date?
We are, yes. After today, yes, we're definitely going to look at that.
I would appreciate that, because clearly, again, and I'll reiterate, the fact is my favorite guy at the transfer station is the guy right there doing it, collecting, because it has forced the issue. It is paying off for it's minimizing that cost, but there's still a cost in the operations because he can't be everywhere. He's also a driver. He's got to run the equipment as well to be able to make that happen. We're still chasing tail because we added a position. Was it 3 years ago, Randy? 2 years ago, one of the other. We added an additional body, and we're still behind at that facility with the nature of what's going through that facility. All right, I would be interested in seeing that fee structure as soon as you can introduce that and give us recommendations on that. Anything else on this division? Seeing none, let's move on, Kayla.
Is going to be street traffic lights. And hydrant rentals and that other public works right here.
Diane, the only question that I had on this, and you answered the question, and there is no savings for LED, or was that already in the previous year's budget? And
It
we're
was in
already,
the previous year's budget. 2 years ago, we were raising over 100,000 for the electricity.
okay, so the
So
7,
fiscal year 21, the one we're in right now, it has the first year of the reduction, which brought it down to the 78,000.
and the question that I asked earlier that Diane's expressed, you look at the way that that account is tracking. Kayla, can you go to the right just to show them? Year to date, where we're expended, but knowing that actually doesn't include the March invoice. We're still looking at 4 more months actually going against that. They anticipate landing at the end of the year around $78,000. I have nothing else. Anybody else have anything associated with electricity? The hydrant rental, the next item below at the 480, that's actual because the water rate increase is already went into effect in October, and that's a known for the 18.5 increasing that you're seeing in that number as well. No other questions. Let's move right along, Kayla.
Okay, next is going to be the wastewater treatment plant.
You should have really let Steve go first.
Sorry. There we go.
Things that came off the page on this with me, with electricity, missing the fact that they're tracking low year to date. Steve answered the question there that spring is actually the highest time frame where it actually kicks in. So they expected that to actually be eaten up. The centrifuge is something that will exceed the referendum amount, so that will have to go out to voters. Estimate on that, Steve, is?
Current estimates based on the recommended piece of equipment, it's about 2 million.
So look forward to seeing that one in a future referendum. In the last
Chair?
piece, yes, Fern.
I was thinking about this during our early discussion. There is, if we need a place to use some of that infrastructure money, or not infrastructure, but the other money, is that actually, that's a shovel-ready project, but it wouldn't cover the total cost. Is that even in the realm of something we put some of that towards? Or it's a huge project, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not going to cover it, but I know Steve had some projects coming up that were pretty much already engineered. I didn't know if those would be a suitable use for any of that funding.
This is something that we've actually are currently looking into right now. Oliver Associates is assisting with that to see if any of those CARES Act funds that do become available may be something that we could use for this project. You know, there's still a lot of legwork to be done on this before we would be able to move forward, but we are trying to look into it.
That's a good answer, Steve. The last piece that came up was I was looking at the account with the interim financing. Diane explained that it's situational, that the fact that with COVID, Steve hasn't been able to use as much of that fund, so we haven't incurred as much interest associated with that. So they're budgeting the same this year, expecting the same sort of trend, knowing that we're looking at, at least it start with additional time so that it can move forward. Any other questions for Steve on his budget? For the general population listening, this is covered from the rates rather than tax. So this is not part of the tax budget. It is the fees for those that are using the resource. If there are no other questions, any other business before us tonight?
Just a point of clarification, next week's meeting is a Zoom and council meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
We're gonna
And
start off with the budget workshop and it will be we'll start off with Ron Smith. He'll be presenting the audit to the council. And then we'll go right into our budget workshop and then into the regular meeting.
Okay.
is it a short actual meeting, knowing that we're looking at 2 hours tonight associated with that?
Yeah, well, the budget, the departments you're gonna be looking at are pretty easy departments. They're not big ticket items, other than probably the town buildings is your largest one. I mean, we're looking at debt service. There's not much we can do about that. So there's some smaller departments that you'll be able to go through rather quickly, I think.
And R.H.R. Smith, we did request that our meeting last week for the benefit of the Finance Committee, rather than present at another meeting that you guys would attend, knowing that it's one of yours, is that let's put it right at a budget workshop to be able to make it less headache on you folks. We appreciate that you're with us through the duration. So thank you. Hearing nothing else, I'll make a recommendation to adjourn and get out of here for the night.
Good.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
Good night.
Night.
Right.